And as we've been talking about the last few minutes, here's what's going on Amnicola Highway. We have a very serious situation involving a report of a Chattanooga police officer who has been shot, and we don't know that officer's condition. We do know we've seen numerous ambulances and emergency vehicles and police cars and SWAT teams pretty much take over Amnicola Highway. Both directions Amnicola Highway shut down the traffic all the way from Wilcox Boulevard down through Chattanooga State. Now, the incident happened apparently at the Naval Reserve Center near the Tennessee River Park. This is in the Chattanooga State Coca-Cola part of Amnicola Highway. And we know from Mayor Andy Burke that a Chattanooga police officer has been reported as being shot.
David, that's right. There are still emergency vehicles racing behind me. If you can hear already, I hear an ambulance with its sirens on, and that's just a police car. But a few minutes ago, another ambulance went down Amnicola Highway. I'm right here on the corner of Wilcox Boulevard and Amnicola Highway, where this is shut down to all traffic except for police and emergency personnel. Right now, we are not sure how many shooters, if they are still being sought for, if they have anyone in custody. We are not sure, but what we do know was that there was a police-involved shooting near the Naval Reserve Center on Amnicola Highway, and one officer is down.
Yeah, just pulled up to Erlanger Hospital. I want to go ahead and show you the scene outside the emergency room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 police cars are out here, unmarked, sheriff's deputies and Chattanooga police. I watched as many of them rushed over here from Amnicola Highway just about 10 minutes ago. I saw one ambulance obviously rushing from the scene to get to Erlanger, really not too far away, only a couple miles away from where this active shooter location is.
There was a situation, another shooting earlier this morning in the 6200 block of Lee Highway. So police are telling Kelly that apparently that's where this started and then spread over to the Amnicola Highway area.
Well, I can tell you that Sergeant Winger, who oversees the homicide division, and 3 other homicide detectives and investigators are here at the scene. They're greeting the ambulances as they come in. And actually, I want to go ahead and point out that blue tarp that we just saw them put up. So we'll pan over to that. That blue tarp to protect the identities of some of these victims and the integrity of this situation at this point outside of Erlanger.
I've received word that one officer is down, that the suspect is also down. As soon as we know more, we will certainly get that information to you.
Really, any business up and down Amnicola Highway, has to be on alert right now as this active shooter situation continues. You see a lot of police cars there outside Erlanger. Our witnesses tell us.
That's okay. The River Park.
Now you see pictures there at the River Park. They are searching for an active shooter. We've heard 30 to 40 police cars up and down Amnicola, and this is serious business, folks. That's why it's blocked off, and that's why we're all staying away.
I work at Ben Springer Glass.
And that is right near the center of the activity. Right. Tell us what you've seen.
Yes, sir. Well, at first we heard, of course, several gunshots, and then all of the policemen started arriving, Hamilton County Police, TBI. There's a mobile command center set up here now. And at first we had to evacuate the building until they could come into our building and make sure it was secure. Once our building was secure, we were asked to come back in, close the doors, lock the doors, and stay inside, which I understand that's happening with several businesses on Amnicola, so we're not the only ones.
Eyewitnesses told me that around 10:45 this morning, this man came into the parking lot, he loaded up his gun, and then he just started firing off shots. People said that they were scared, they started running and things like that. But right now, what I can tell you is I'm looking right now at the parking lot. There's about a dozen homes on the ground right now. I guess that's the area where it's marking where the bullet shells that currently lie right now. But investigators right now are all on the scene, and they are investigating. They're trying to figure out more information. I'm going to stay out here trying to gather eyewitnesses and gather more information. We'll have more of that coming up tonight at 5 o'clock for our viewers.
This is Chief Fred Fletcher, just now arriving on the scene. Like we said, he'd be arriving any minute. That is Nathan Vaughn, also on the CPD command staff. Chief Fletcher giving a man a pat on the back. Chief Fletcher, like we mentioned, just arriving from Knoxville, Tennessee, where he had a previously scheduled meeting. Nathan Vaughn and Chief Fred Fletcher now arriving entering the emergency room. Back to you all.
I moved from that intersection of Wilcox Boulevard and Amnicola Highway down the road a little ways to now the Police and Fire Training Services Center. This is where the media is all gathering and all setting up. We're told we will be briefed by the police department's public information officer shortly. He just came in and checked in on us, and he said it might be a little while because he's waiting on some national media outlets to get here. But as soon as he gets all of the information confirmed, he will be relaying some more information to us.
I was out on break, and all of a sudden I heard about 10 or 15 pops, just really fast. Pop, 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 just really fast. And I looked around at the guy that was working with me, and I said, that sounds like gunfire. And the next thing I knew, there was police everywhere.
We are hearing from Kelly McCarthy that it is no longer an active shooter situation. One can draw a number of conclusions from that. One thing I want to stress that I'm seeing repeated constantly on social media that's so important. I'm seeing so many people, so many of you who are saying, pray for Chattanooga, pray for our city. And I'm glad to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also can tell you that they are heavily guarded and armed here at the Police Services Center. When we drove through that first barricade, we were greeted by a lot of officers with heavy machinery on them. And once we entered this room, it was locked behind us, and we are told we are no longer able to leave the room. We are locked inside for our safety. I will let you know if we get any more information about the press conference, but from what I know right now, it could be a while.
These are new pictures coming in. This must be from the Lee Highway location.
Right, that is the Lee Highway right outside, and just right next door to each other. It's the Armed Forces Center there.
Right.
You have several branches of the military where people go, and that's where they register.
You can see, however, in these pictures, and I'm sure they're going to be on our website, so you can zoom in. There are bullet holes in the windows here at this Lee Highway location.
You've got the Armed Forces Career Center on the left when we pop back to that other picture, and then the National Guard entrance there in the middle. But that's where there are bullet holes in the windows, shell casings on the ground, quite an investigation going on.
The good news we can report from Erlanger, that police officer said to be in stable condition, family by his side, but Blood Assurance really needs your donations today.
We have pictures now, as we have reported to you earlier, of the bullet holes. This is from the Lee Highway location there.
I want to show you some new photos that have just come in. We've been continuing to monitor all of our social media accounts as the situation develops. These are photos taken from inside of one of those recruiting centers. You see there multiple shots fired into the front there. You can see in the upper right-hand corner that says the U.S. Marine Recruiting Center.
Was there any prior indication that there might be an attack today?
No, we had no intelligence indicating there would be any type of attack today.
There were numerous Chattanooga and Hamilton County officers who responded. They arrived on the scene extremely quickly, and they actively and enthusiastically engaged this brazen criminal. And one of those officers was injured by gunfire from this criminal.
This guy right here, Robert Ament, he brought his American flag out. I just saw him just moments ago, just driving around this parking lot. Robert, how did you hear about this?
I heard around it. I was at the gas station filling up some gas, and I heard about it from the sales clerk, and went home and looked it up on the news, turned on the TV, and there it was. And that's thought, wow, this is really going on in Chattanooga. This is where we live. That's hard, man.
The suspect, according to what we've been able to gather, is apparently from our area, or at least a resident of our area. There are some social media postings, and we're being very careful about this until everything's confirmed and everything kind of lines up. We'll announce it when we're very confident about his identity. We are not clear exactly how that shooter died. We found out that the active shooter situation had ended, and one could assume that the shooter was shot by a police officer, but he very well may have also turned the gun on himself, and that answer was not given at the press conference this afternoon. Mayor Andy Burke very rightfully opened the press conference today by calling today a nightmare for Chattanooga. There will be some across the nation or somewhere across the world thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on in that city? It's out of control. No, it's not. We had one isolated incident today, apparently motivated by one person, and things are slowly getting back to normal. We suffered a terrible tragedy today. Now, these are my words and not his, but we will get past this. We'll get beyond this. To repeat that, a senior federal official has confirmed to NBC the suspect in the Chattanooga shooting has been identified as Mohammed Youssef Abdulaziz. The officials also confirm he is a naturalized U.S. citizen from Kuwait.
They are very on heightened alert here. When we pulled into the neighborhood, they respectfully asked us to stay back. You could tell that they are in the middle of a serious operation right now.
Matt, any report? I mean, are they already in the home? I'm sorry if I wasn't able to ascertain that.
We are unable to verify right now if they've actually made entry into the home. Again, we're talking about a home off Colonial Way Circle. This is in the Colonial Shores neighborhood in the Big Ridge area of Hickson. We made it to the entrance of the street of where that home is located, but as you can imagine, there were numerous law enforcement officials that were moving in at the time, and they told us to get back. So we cannot confirm at this point if they've actually made their way into their home. But earlier when I spoke with a very reliable source with the Chattanooga Police Department, they were telling me that yes, he lives in a few miles of the staging area, and yes, we're getting ready to move in and raid the shooting suspect's home.
Right now I'm standing on the other side of the road from the River Park, and if you can see, there is still crime tape roped off several different law enforcement vehicles behind that crime tape, and down below is where the Naval Resource Center is. If you walk this other way, and this is the entrance to the River Park that would normally take you down to that Naval Resource Center. That is being blocked off by police. No one will be going in and out of there. To recap a little bit about what we've learned from police, we do know that this is the scene where 4 Marines were shot and killed by a single shooter. That shooter is also now dead. We don't know anything more about those Marines, but we know that this is the location here on Amnicola Highway where they were when the shooter entered and shot and killed all 4 of them. Other than that, we know that the FBI is now handling this investigation entirely, and any new updates we get will be from the FBI. And they said now they're going to be focusing their investigation on the shooter. And as you can tell from Matt's report, they are trying to track down from where his home and his residence is. They said that would be the next step.
But at one point we did get to hear that the Officer Pedigo, was in stable condition. A gunshot wound to the ankle, and he was taken into surgery. He should be out, we're told, any minute now with surgery. And officers leaving here with smiles on their faces saying he's okay.
I'm here with Congressman Fleischman. Congressman, where were you when you heard about this?
I was actually on the House floor in Washington casting votes, and some of my colleagues came up to me and said that there'd been a shooting in Chattanooga. I immediately left the House floor and then found out about this horrible news. And I've come back, I've flown right back, I've just gotten back into town. I'm still in shock.
To know that we lost 4 Marines today, what goes through your mind, Congressman?
I'm deeply saddened, I'm concerned, and this is a horrific act. This cannot be tolerated. We will come together as Chattanoogans, as Tennesseans, as Americans, to find out what happened and to fight back.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm David Carroll.
I'm Cindy Sexton. We say good afternoon to you. A very unusual day here in Chattanooga. We've been with you live on the air since around noon today.
Now, everything got started this morning with shots fired on Lee Highway at the Army Reserve Center. Just a few minutes later, there was a report of an officer down on Amnicola Highway near the Naval Reserve Center. Shortly afterward, we learned that 4 Marines working at the Naval Reserve Center there by the River Park on Amnicola Highway had been gunned down. We later learned that the suspect, the shooter, also had died. So this afternoon, we are all looking for answers as to why this happened. We are able to say that the police officer who was reported down survived with a shot to the ankle, but he's in stable condition and expected to recover. And at this hour, Chattanooga police and federal agents are reportedly searching the residence of Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, looking for clues as to his motivation and what he may have intended to do had he survived this.
This is a special edition of Channel 3 Eyewitness News. Tragedy in Chattanooga.
I can tell you that there are no braver or more selfless people in the Chattanooga Police Department And I can tell you that the officers of the Chattanooga Police Department saved many lives today, and I've never been prouder to be a public servant.
Tonight we report on the unthinkable. Our country appears to have once again been struck by an act of terrorism, this time right here on Chattanooga soil. 4 Marines are dead. The motive for the attacks remains unknown. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Glover.
And I'm Cindy Sexton. We are waiting on a live press conference from the Department of Justice happening right here in Chattanooga. They're not ready to start that just yet. So in the meantime, still many questions surround the tragedy that unfolded today.
A recap of the facts. 4 Marines are dead, several injured, including a Chattanooga police officer who's said to be recovering well after surgery, and a Navy sailor who is still listed in critical condition tonight. The shooter is dead, and during a raid led by the FBI at his home, 2 women were taken in for questioning. This was a quick response by multiple law enforcement agencies. Let's take a look back at how it all unfolded. 10:45 a.m. Shots were fired at the Armed Forces Career Center on Lee Highway. These photos show the extent of the damage. Bullet holes nearly framing a decal declaring the property a gun-free zone. Police then pursued the gunman 7 miles away to the Navy Operational Support Center and Marine Corps Reserve Center complex off Amnicola Highway. Calls for assistance rang out across the region. Streets were blocked, hospitals locked down, airspace closed. People at Chat State and other area businesses were instructed to shelter in place. An errant bullet from the shootout hit the Coca-Cola bottling plant across the street. From the first shots fired to the last was no more than half an hour. By 1:30, authorities tweeted, "Active shooter situation is over." When the smoke cleared, among the shattered glass and crime scene tape, a Chattanooga police officer and a Navy sailor were injured, but 4 U.S. Marines had paid the ultimate price. The shooter was also dead, identified as 24-year-old Muhammad Yusuf Abdulaziz. He was a graduate of Red Bank and UTC, believed to have been born in Kuwait. This mugshot comes from a recent DUI arrest. At 3 p.m., a press conference. Mayor Andy Burke calls the attacks incomprehensible. U.S. Attorney Bill Killiam terms the incident an act of domestic terrorism. In the 4 o'clock hour, officers converge on the gunman's house. 2 women were taken away in handcuffs. Just after 5 o'clock,
about the tragic shooting that took place in Chattanooga.
From the Oval Office, the president referred to the day's events in Chattanooga as, quote, a heartbreaking circumstance. He called the nation to pray for the families and promised a prompt investigation. Before sundown, the governor was in town, meeting with city leaders as worship centers opened their doors to those looking for answers, solace, or strength. Witnesses describe it as a hailstorm of bullets that tore through the 2 military centers.
And while federal authorities will take the lead on this investigation, it still is a Chattanooga Police Department case, and one that strikes home on a number of different themes. For everyday people, a supposed case of domestic terrorism allegedly carried out by someone who grew up here, a homegrown 24-year-old man. And as you noted, as for police, responding to the radio alert that no one wants to hear of an officer being down.
FBI is investigating the half hour of chaos that left 4 Marines dead.
You just heard them getting underway, so let's switch over right now. The Department of Justice having a brief for us live here in Chattanooga.
This has been a long day for our city. Hopefully soon I'm going to put my head down for a little while, and I just thought I'd say a couple of things that I'm going to think about as I drift off for a few minutes. I'm going to think about this afternoon as I came back to the Police Service Center with Chief Fletcher and walked up to see a woman who was at the scene telling the chief about the heroic deeds that one of her fellow officers did to help her and to save another one of our officers. I'm going to think about another officer who was at the scene who engaged the criminal, telling us about how the training that he had received helped make sure that the actions didn't have greater effect. And I'm going to think about another officer who is truly my friend, who as I hugged him and said, "Good job," shook just a little bit.
Tell you a little bit about what we just watched. Governor Haslam, I think, encapsulated the day pretty well, starting off saying it's a great city with a broken heart tonight. Senator Corker mentioned 4 heroes fallen, of course, talking about those 4 Marines, and mentioned that 1 person still in very serious condition tonight. We think that's that Navy sailor who was also injured in the shooting today. And Mayor Burke said we cannot countenance what happened to the 4 families today, talking about the families of the Marines who were killed.
Well, Cindy, Colonial Shores went from a quiet neighborhood today to the center of a federal investigation. Law enforcement spent the better part of the afternoon inside the family home of Abdul Aziz. All is pretty quiet right now. You can see crime tape is still up behind me with a law enforcement presence guarding the home and guarding the street tonight. But this is really just the beginning as federal investigators try to get to the heart of his exact motive.
Well, I'm here live at the recruiting center here off of Lee Highway. I'm going to step out of the way and let you take a look. This is where folks have placed American flags, balloons, wreaths. There's some signs over there as well. You can see one person just like that gentleman over there. They've stopped by here personally just to take in the scene themselves. I spoke with one man earlier this evening. He tells me he joined the military at this recruiting station 18 years ago. And he tells me as a soldier, a father, and a Chattanoogan, he's taking in what happened here today on a number of levels. And that's the case for a lot of us here in Chattanooga as we start to heal.